How's it going? In this video, we're going to talk about how to study for the AMC 8, 10, and 12, a method. All right, is this the only method of studying? No, there are many different methods of studying. This is just one method that I think is a good practice to get into. Maybe use it for a time and then another time you won't need it. It's up to you how you want to progress, but many students have asked in various forums, how do I exactly go about studying? Like, they know what to study, but how do you study effectively? I want to answer that question in this video. Try not to skip around too much because I want you to get the full gist of how it's going to work. The first thing is, as you go through different tests or books, AOPS or otherwise, or Alchemist, you're going to come across problems that you may or may not know how to do. They're going to involve concepts that you may or may not know. After you do a test, right, let's say you've completed the test and it was whatever, it was 2001 AMC 10. Where does it go? Typically for most students, it either, if you plan on using it in some way, it goes in a pile in the corner of your room. And that pile grows ever larger until mom throws it out at some point. And that's basically what happens, right? How often do you return to that pile of papers to ever look at it ever again? Extremely rarely, unless you're, ridiculously dedicated or have a lot of time on your hands. Most people leave that pile of papers alone. So the first thing is we have to learn to find a way around that human behavior, if you will. So what we're going to look at here is a different way of accomplishing that. What we want to be able to do with all of these tests and materials we've got is a process I want to call extraction. Okay? When you take an orange and you want the orange juice, you extract the orange juice from the orange in order to make your orange juice, and then you throw away the parts that you don't want. You get the parts that you want, the fruit of it, and you throw away the rest, right? The test is like the skin or the outside skin of the fruit, okay? But the fruit itself is what you learned from that test. So our goal is to get the information that was new to us or that we made a mistake on in the test. We want to get that information out and have it in a place that we can readily access. Okay, so the first thing is you need to accumulate a whole bunch of formulas. Some are taught in regular school, some are not taught in regular school. You need a place to store these things so that you can access them easily. I recommend a small pocket notebook. This one here is a Moleskine. It is leather bound. You can buy them at Barnes & Noble. Probably you get them cheaper on Amazon now. They sell for about $12 at Barnes & Noble, so maybe you can get them for $9.95 on Amazon. I have no idea. They're pretty cheap though. If you're going to be sticking with this for a while, 2+ years that you're going to want to put into this, it's good to get a nice one. Okay, once you've got the notebook, if you don't want to get a nice one, by the way, get a cheap one. At least get a cheap one. I recommend a pocket-sized notebook for this. Okay, the pocket-sized notebook is only for formulas and concepts. You do not put examples in it. Those will go somewhere else. We'll talk about it in a second. Okay, so the reason you want it to be pocket size is that you can carry it with you wherever you go. Doctor's office, you're waiting for mom or something, or dad, or wherever they're going to run about their chores, you can pull this out and study it. You can take it to school and study it during the boring class. Whatever class you have that you don't need to pay attention in, you could study in that or something else. It's easy, it's handy, it fits most places in most backpack pockets. Okay? If you get the cheap one, they sell them at Walmart for about $4 for $1. This is like actually 96 cents. It's like 24 cents a notebook. And then once you do so, do not write on both sides of the notebook. What I like to do is write only on one side, and I number the concepts. They're not in any particular order, as you can see. The first one is area of an equilateral triangle, s squared root 3 over 4. I don't know why the focus is out. And then when you turn the next page, don't write on the back side. The reason is you can see the front side bleeding through. When information bleeds through, it afflicts our ability to process the new information on the next page. So instead, you're not going to need so many pages that you need to write on the back sides. just make it a flip book, and then you can just flip through writing only on one side, numbering the concepts as you go. I haven't actually filled these full of formulas. I've only got like 50 some odd topics. In this one, I wrote only on this page, and I made a note to myself that concept number 1 is actually the same as 46 in here. I double noted it. So sometime in the future, I'm going to come back and revise this. The first concept basically says that the sums of the squares of 2 times the squares of opposite of the sides is equal to the sum of the squares of the diagonals. That's true for any parallelogram. I mean, that's kind of a random, obscure concept. I don't know why it's number 1. When I started making the notebook, that was the concept that I was looking at. Maybe you could make it twice. Once where you just get it all down, and then later you go back and refine it if you want and put it in some particular order classified by concept, like all the triangle information in one place. And then just go through. If you can name it, give it a name. I didn't give that first one a name. And then after you're done with the first page, when you turn the page, leave this side blank. I kind of prefer to write in these notebooks in pen as long as you write nicely, because the pen will stand out on the paper a little stronger than a pencil will. Okay? Don't write on the back side again. You're not going to need the back side of the pages for the whole notebook. Fill that up as you go, as you learn new concepts. Okay, so that's one way to extract important pieces of information from solutions and problems. The next way that we're going to cover is just something that I made up. I haven't seen this demonstrated elsewhere. Maybe it is. I'm sure I'm not the first person to think of approaching things this way. Okay, so I don't remember what problem it's from. It's from a random AMC 8, problem number 9. Okay, and it says the average of the 5 numbers in a list is 54. The average of the first 2 numbers is 48. What is the average of the last 3 numbers? Okay, we're actually going to cover 2 methods for this problem. The first one is the standard approach that you would do when you're first learning how to think clearly about these problems. But later, when you're more advanced and maybe you come across a similar question again, there's actually a super fast technique for this that makes it pretty trivial. Let's get to it. What you want to do in a problem, what I want you to learn to think, you want to diagram the thought process that you go through to solve the problem. So first off, this says the average. So as soon as you read the words the average, you should stop reading. Like stop right at that point, don't read anything else, and process what it means to be the average. And that's where you access the formula from your notebook. If you can memorize it, great. If you forgot it, go back and look at the notebook. The formula I like for averages is that the sum of n things divided by n equals the average of those n things. Okay? And so what I do is I make another notebook. This time a full-size notebook. This is one that a student made. It's pretty old now, so the color's kind of faded. And I'll show you what it looks like zoomed in. So as you can see, it says the average, well, it's kind of hard to show it. The average of the 5 numbers, the same wording, right? But you can see in it that the first 2 words, the average, are highlighted in yellow, right? Just like I underlined them on the board here. And what I want you to create is a color coding system that you always use for all problems going forward. And what that color coding system will be, for this notebook, it's yellow, I don't have a yellow marker, pink, and orange. And if you need a 3rd color or 4th color, add green. And what these represent is the order of thought that you have when you look at this problem. So this right here on the notebook is highlighted in yellow clearly. Then down below the problem, you're going to write a box, just with your pen or pencil, whatever you're working with, and highlight the box yellow so that it corresponds with the words the average. And then what you're going to write to yourself is a note. I like to call these triggers. Okay? It's like green light, go. When you're driving, you're not driving yet, but when mom's driving and she's at the green light and it turns, or the light, and it turns green, She doesn't really think about going, she just goes. It's an automatic response to a given stimulus. That's what a trigger is, okay? So you have to have an automatic, instantaneous response. You want to train your brain to, as soon as you see this, and you're going to write yourself notes. Notes about thoughts. You're going to write trigger. You can modify this to your way of thinking however you want. Average. So average is a trigger word, right? And then I highlight the average, this highlighted in yellow as well again, to keep with the color coordination. And then I just write what it is, and I might write words around it, right? This is a deep thought notebook. It's not like the other notebook, which is just concepts, not very well explained, just you look at it and you recognize what it is. This is more worked out, more thought out, complete sentences, or more complete sentences. So you write, automatically think of the sum of n things divided by n equals the average of those n things. And then in addition, I've highlighted this in yellow as well. And so if you look on the notebook, you will see it is right here. Average is in yellow, sum n over n equals average of n is in yellow, right? And that's all it is. That's the first thought that you have on this problem. You have it, you write this down, right? Then we move on to the next thought. The next thought that you will have when reading, and it's a good idea, honestly, in a lot of problems, you mostly don't need to finish reading the whole thing, right? Mostly you need to read only until there's actionable information, right? We could act upon those words, we did so. The next actionable words are the 5 numbers in a list is 54. And this then gets highlighted in a different color, the second color of our color coordination plan, which is pink. And on every problem that you diagram in this way, pink will be the second thought. The first thought will always be yellow. I do recommend whatever colors you choose that yellow is the first thought. And the reason is yellow will jump off the page stronger than all the other colors, in my opinion. Maybe you feel otherwise and then you can modify it to your heart's content. Okay, so then we write pink. You don't actually write the word pink. Instead, you're going to highlight a box that is pink, just like this. And then you're going to write the work associated with that. So if the average of the 5 numbers in a list is 54, then we're going to use this formula now. This formula comes to help the next thought. It's the second thought building on the first thought. So it's the sum of n things. In this case, it's 5 things. Sum of 5 divided by 5 is equal to the average of those 5 things. But we're actually not going to write average of 5 things because we know what it is. It's 54, right? And then you write this. And then there's something that you do instantaneously in this situation. Everybody who already has studied for a long time and watching this video knows exactly what I'm going to say. It's instantaneous. You do not think about it. The moment you write this, in fact, if you're really good, you'll just skip writing this on your test and you'll write the next step and skip to it. What you do immediately is multiply by 5. Why do you do that? Here's the thing. A lot of times people think, oh, well, how do I know to do that? It's the only thing you can do. The only thing you can do on this problem. Think about things you could do. Are you going to square both sides? No. Are you going to subtract 7 from both sides? No. It's really obvious what you're going to do. The only thing you can do is multiply by 5 to get rid of it. And now you will get a new piece of information. The sum of 5 things is 270. The sum of the 5 numbers. And you'll notice that on here I've written multiply. Immediately, don't hesitate, right? Why do you write immediately, don't hesitate? You're telling your future self who's going to come back to these notes and review them, the thought processes that got you to your solution, you're telling that future self how to think for the test. And that way, when your future self looks at it, you're reminded, okay, I need to remember to have triggers and automatic responses to certain stimulus, okay? Then we go to the next step. The next step, I'm going to erase, well, I'm not going to erase. I guess I'll erase this, so no, dang it. We'll just use the orange right here. I'm running out of board space. So on the board space, we go to the next thought on here, which on the paper is highlighted up here. And it's the average of the first two numbers is 48, right? And it's highlighted in orange. Why orange? Because as we noted, that's the third thought in our thought process, right? And so then we will go orange, okay, and it's, what is it? It's this right here now. The average of the first two numbers is 48. That will be all in orange. We then go to the orange box that we're going to create. I guess I will try and write down here. I have to bend down, I guess. This box will be orange on your paper. Again, don't write the word orange. Use the color. Your brain will process the colors faster than words anyway, right? And then what do? You process this using the same formula we got from the yellow, right? The average of the first two numbers is 48, so you'll write sum of 2 divided by 2 equals 48, and again, you will immediately multiply, or if you were really taking the test and you've become proficient at that point, you would have just written the sum of the first two numbers, or the two numbers that we're dealing with, first two is 96, right? And now we have another piece of information here and a new piece of information here. Okay, this right here is going to illustrate exactly how most AMC problems work. Most AMC problems are going to give you starting information, like given information. The goal with the given information in most cases is to manipulate it in some way to produce new pieces of information. Once you have those new pieces of information, the goal then becomes you're building up new pieces of information. You need to figure out how to use them as you progress through the problem, right? So when you got to this sum of 5 is 270, did you know how to use it? No, you didn't, right? When you got here, you didn't know what you were going to do with it yet. You just knew that this was the trigger for thinking about averages. And so when you get to this step right here, you just applied the concept that you previously thought about after reading the first two words, right? And then you do the same thing with this. So now we read on, it's the end, and you could make this green or whatnot, whatever color you want, I guess, green is fine. Try not to use too dark of colors because you might be highlighting over actual words and you don't want to make the words not readable. What is the average of the last three numbers? Well, how am I going to get that? It must be that I use the two pieces of new information that I generated. This is how the AMC problems are built. They're built on starting concepts that lead to new pieces of information that the user or the reader or this problem solver then applies those new pieces of information to arrive at the final piece of information. Now, the number of starting pieces of information or things that you have to modify to get to the next step in the solution process increases as the problems go from 1 to 25. Maybe problem 1 has one thing and you just act on that one thing and you're done. And problem 2, 3, 4, maybe they all have that. By 5 through 8, you're going to have two things you have to act on. And as you progress through, the things might become more obscure, or there could be 3 things, and then the 3 things lead to 2 things, and now these 2 things lead to the last step, which would be green. And what would it be? Think about it. If the sum of 5 things is this, and the sum of 2 things is this, and these 2 are part of that 5, the natural thing is to subtract them to get the sum of 3 things. And if I take away 100 and then add 4, I'll be at 174, right? Now, what do I do with this? We go back to the first thought. What does it say? I want the average of these 3 things. How do I get the average of the 3 things? I take the sum and I divide it by n, and n's already written right here. So I divide by 3 and you're going to get 58, right? And 58 is answer choice D. That is the solution path in the order of how you think about things, right? And you write yourself notes on the paper as well. These 2 pieces of information must now be used or combined, and then you combine it here to get 174, apply the first concept, and 58. And notice the little word answer. Little things like that help a lot. Okay, we talked about a fast method for this, and I want to cover it real quick because I think it's interesting. Once you become proficient, you shouldn't just look at questions you've done before and go, oh, I know one way to do that, therefore I don't need to study it anymore. That is incorrect. You should be seeking to find ways to make the process faster. It is a timed test. If you're going to qualify for AMY, the less time that you take on earlier problems, the more time you have to solve the qualifying problems that are going to get you to the next round. Okay, so how could we do this really quick? Somebody who is really talented and they've studied a lot, probably maybe a year or more, might know this trick already, and perhaps you've thought of it. There's something about an average. It works like a balance. So if the average of the 5 numbers is 54, we can think of a balance in the middle, like a fulcrum, that is labeled as 54. And what we're going to do is the average of the first 2 numbers is 48. You can just assume that both of those numbers are actually 48. It won't hurt anything to assume that. And the difference is -6 and -6. You're going down from the main average by 6. These are like a weight pulling down on this side. So what do I need on the other side? I have 3 numbers to do it with. I need the total weight to add up to be equal to this weight, but positive. That would be +4, +4, +4, 12 and -12 balances. So what's 54 plus 4? 58. Right? So there are faster ways to do things. Never look at a problem that you've done before. Sometimes you will do tests a second time, or whatnot. You come back to it after a year to study again. Don't just gloss over problems that you've already done. See if you've improved, or seek to improve your previous solution method and modify it with new techniques. Okay, so this problem came from some AMC 8. I no longer know what it was. Notice as well that I actually cut the problem out of the AMC 8. This is typed. I just cut it out. You can use double stick tape to attach it to the notebook page. Or you can use glue stick, whatever you prefer. I think I used double stick tape for this, but I might have used glue stick. I don't really remember. It's a student made it. They let me keep it. Okay. So this is just a random AMC 8 problem. It was problem 9 from some year. I don't remember which one. That is how you diagram a question. We're going to do one more of these to show it on another problem. I'm going to pause the video and be right back. Okay, this is the second example that we're going to use about this color coding thought exploration connection thought process that we use to solve problems on the AMC. Again, this works for any competition. You can do this with anything. Probably not your school textbook, because you can't cut the problems out of your school textbook unless you make a copy of them first. Now, why do we use this method? Why do I cut it out? Why do I cut the problems out on the page that we talked about? The reason is because we're trying to extract. Again, the goal is to throw away that old test, because guess what? You're never going to look at it again. Right now, you don't have to use this method. Some people, this is probably what you do right now. You probably do the test and you try to say to yourself, I'll just remember what I learned. How's that working out for you? Yeah, it doesn't work that well. You need a way to extract important information so that you can review it more in the future. Unless you have a mind like a steel trap and you never forget anything, photographic memory, then okay, go with that. You probably don't need to watch this video if that's the case. For the rest of us, we need to find some way to extract all the important information from a test or an AOPS book or whatever resource we're using from online, and this is a method by which we can do that. Just like the small notebook concept, after you finish the first problem, don't write on the backside. Again, because we are highlighting now especially, we don't want it to bleed through. So just get a new notebook when you run out and you'll build a few notebooks up. It's fine. This notebook happens to be wide ruled. It wasn't my choice. It was what was on hand. I recommend a college ruled notebook. What was wide ruled even for? I guess 3rd grade or 2nd grade or something. I don't know. Okay, so here's the next problem. It says we're going to do it like you would think about it in the problem. So as you were taking this on the test, how would you do it? 2/3 of the people in a room are seated in 3/4 of the chairs, right? That's going to be highlighted entirely in yellow. Yellow, 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 all of this yellow and 3/4 of the chairs. Highlight that in yellow, come down here, make a little box. Again, make sure it's outline the box. Don't just put that, because the outline with the color on it stands out better than just the color by itself. Okay, so just make a little rectangle about the width of your highlighter, right? And then put the color yellow, not the word yellow, in the box. And what I wrote on here is record facts. Again, when you're taking notes, you are talking to your future self who's going to review this, right? Record facts. You need to write things so that when you look at it at some future date, you know what you were thinking at that time. Don't try to look at the work from like school homework and interpret your thoughts, right? That's kind of hard sometimes. Write sentences, write actual English, or if you have a different language, use the language you prefer. Okay, record facts. 2/3 people in 3/4 of the chairs. Okay? Then ask, write yourself notes about your thought process. Ask, what do we know? Right? What do we know about this? What can we say? What can we extract from this sentence? Okay? Then we can say something like, convert words to symbols, basic algebra thinking. 2/3 of P equals 3/4 of C. This is the closing thought of this part, the first thought process that you have on this question. Okay, but something else you can actually infer at the end. This implies if these chairs have people in them, then 1/4 of the chairs are empty. Okay, so this is a side thought. You might want to highlight it in the next color, which would be pink, because in a second, and again, you can do your color coding in any way. The only thing I'd like you to keep is that yellow always first. Okay, so the rest of the people are standing. If there are 6 empty chairs, so the 6 empty chairs gets highlighted in the next color of pink. Right? And what does it mean if 6 empty chairs? Combined with this thought, you can actually pull an arrow to combine it, and there are 6 empty chairs. And I wrote actual words here. I wrote combine 1/4 of C is equal to 6. Right? 1/4, 6 chairs. You can put chairs in word form if you want. Then simply do the only thing you can do. Right? That means there are 24 chairs. Right? You could also say, if you didn't want to do this, what we actually want to know is 3/4 of the chairs. If this is 1/4 is 6, then 3/4 is going to be 3 times 6. So 3/4 would equal 18. So you can put 18 people, or maybe write the work that you did. 3/4 of 24 equals 18 people are seated. Okay, and then maybe color code this in the next color. This would be colored in orange, right? Because why? Because it's going to lead us to our final thought, which is this part of the problem. You'll highlight it in orange, and you will write an orange box down here. And now you want to try to answer this question. Again, everything builds on previous thoughts, right? We built off of this thought to come up with this thought. Now we're going to build on this thought to come up with the next thought, which is how many people are in the room. If 18 people are seated, right, then you can write words. I'm running out of space. I'm going to write it over here. At the orange box, I wrote, then 2/3 people seated means that 2/3 of P is equal to 18. And then you just simply solve that. You multiply by the reciprocal, so you're going to get 3/2, P equals 27. Now, we don't have to write defined variables on your actual test. You don't need to write people equals P. That's for schoolwork. On the test, you just go straight to this, basically. All these notes that you're making here are thoughts that you have. What you actually write on the test as you're solving is probably much less than that. Something like just this equation might be all you write for your first thought. And then your final thought, there's 27 people in the room. That's going to be the answer for this particular question. Okay, this method is going to work for all levels, 8, 10, and 12. You can do it for all of them. And what you can do then, I recommend maybe printing the old tests on your printer at home or wherever you have access to a printer, only on single-sided, so that you can cut problems from, like, you don't have the issue of problems on both sides of the page and you want one on this side and also one on this side. Just make it single-sided, and that way you can cut the problem out without having to worry about that. And then once you're done extracting everything from one test, you've also recorded it on the tracking form, which is found in the How to Prepare video description. I might make a later different tracking form, but that's the one I'm using right now. Record your score there. You've extracted all the important concepts, right, from this. Now, there's nothing in this as far as concepts go that would go in this small notebook. There just isn't. I mean, what are you going to write? If you see 3/4 of chair, I mean, come on. This is just algebra. There's nothing that goes in there. Not every problem is going to generate something for the small notebook. The small notebook is for formulas and concepts. Okay? I hope this helps. Leave a like or a comment down below if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer. I'm not going to probably make more of these kinds of videos, but it's just something that you can use, a tool that you can add to your arsenal. This is a way to study, a method, right? I think it's very effective. It's worked for a lot of students. Have a good one.